breathing calm and then holding it, that kind of thing, keeping it steady as possible. Get a bounce board before you get lights. I actually forgot my bounce board, which we just used, and they're a pain in the butt sometimes because the wind catches them, but they're like 50 bucks, they're super cheap, you just bounce any available light. That beautiful golden light in the corner there, you could bounce over to the other side of the room, it'd look great. And it saves you from setting up lights, all kinds of expensive stuff. But that would be next. And then think studio backdrops to set anything, which we're not even at a stage yet because my background is ENG, electronic news gathering, so it's sort of out in the street, so that's where I'm the most comfortable. And it gives a fresh sort of feel. So I think I've done enough talking, so let's let Amber do some more.
Here's a typical shot with my back to the sun, but as you notice, my face is shadowed. Now when we bounce a little light in, it can make all the difference in the world.
All right, a little hot, but you know, that's just for illustrative purposes, and it was that quick.
You mean hot as in
That's it, totally hot too. Look at you, you're in that beautiful, perfect, soft light dancing around. Nice and diffuse, always want diffuse light. But we'll talk more about this. This is such a huge field, so, you know, save your questions up for the end if you have any technical stuff, or just find me in the audience afterwards, because it is such an exhaustive and vast sort of field. But I'll just go through the basics so that way you all feel comfortable.
And that said, it's huge, but there's some core things that you can get down to make a real difference, and they're not things you need to go to school for. They're just things somebody needs to tell you about framing, about you know, that.
It's almost common sense stuff at the end of it, you know, when you look back. So let's just listen to sound here real quick.
A lav mic is ideal, but if you don't have a lav mic, the next best thing is a stick mic. A stick mic is especially good in the wind or if you have to interview someone. Whatever you do, don't rely on the mic on the camera because it picks up too much ambient noise.
Okay, again, you understand everyone has microphones on their cameras, if you have little cameras, even the little ones, and they're fine. The problem is that they're always set at what they call auto, so it'll always balance for the maximum noise that enters the microphone. So if a car does go by, it'll balance for that, and all of a sudden the person who's speaking is lost. So that's why you kind of want to get external mics and run it through it, or go in somewhere quiet and go close. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. And this is just to illustrate why you...
It's good to have a nice steady shot, so you should definitely use a tripod. Otherwise, it looks like the stairs that I'm sitting on are rocking all over the place. This is the same shot, but handheld. Although Chris is a good cameraman, it's still a little shaky because he's far away. So the best thing to do if you need to be handheld is to be close to your subject, so it's not rocking all over the place. That's a little too close.
So again, the idea about that, anyone that's you know, a Flickr member and is used to sort of shooting stuff on wide or tight, it's your angle of shooting. If you're wider and closer, it's just steadier, and then if you're farther away and tighter, you have a narrow field of vision. So these are some things to keep in mind if you start to embark on your own podcast or just messing around for family photos. Actually, all of these things would be immediately applicable with your little kid shots and shots of the family and stuff.
And you know what, we keep saying podcasts here, that's because that's a lot of our experience, but it's really, all this stuff applies to any video you're producing.
Yeah, television, movies, you know, so anything at all. Anytime you have a camera in your hand, you want to be thinking nice, calm, cool, steady. Can I see them? Can I hear them? And am I going to make the viewer sick? And you know, the reason they're important is because everything's kind of gone HD now, and I get asked that a lot. You know, should I get HD? Should I not get HD? Or what's the difference, or whatever? And you know, for people out there that have cameras and they think that they can't get started, they can't do something until they get an HD camera, that's absolutely wrong. The SD is fantastic, and it's still the format kind of in a way to use. But if you don't have a camera and you're going to go buy something, get an HD camera because it's clearly going that way. But there's some things with HD that you might want to consider before, if you have an SD camera, before maybe you upgrade, or just if you want to know kind of what the difference is. And generally, HD is just a giant file. You know, it's like 1900 pixels across. It's just big. And the SD file is, I shoot native 720 by 480, so it's a little bit smaller. And people, have you ever heard of the red camera? I think that file size is technically a kilometer wide. It's huge. So these things are enormous, and it's going to take up a lot of space on your computer. It's going to take up a lot of crunching time. You're going to have to store them somewhere, which means you're going to have to get a Drobo, which is an awesome robot type thing that can handle all of your information. Something that's really expensive, and that's not necessary actually.
I think Jeff has a couple.
Oh yeah, Jeff's got a couple Robos, but he's a little weird. So, and the final consideration you want to make though is what's my end product going to be? If I have a file size, if my whole video is 19 by 1920, 1080, P, whatever it is, all these things, it's not necessarily important. But if my file size is this big and I'm going to crunch it down and export it, say 640, by 360, which is kind of the size of the web, why do I need such a big file size to start? It's just going to be giant. So that's why I mention that, so that it's not a barrier to entry, so that you don't think you need it. Because right now, North America, web-wise, is kind of like a second world country, right? Like Asia, Eastern Europe, those Estonia, like they're miles and miles ahead of us, bandwidth-wise. And then there's us, and then there's the rest of the world. So until Rogers, Bell, other providers get our internet up to speed, we're still kind of chugging along, with the blip and that, and then waiting for the little thing to load, and then, maybe going to get a coffee while it loads and come back and can play. We all do that. So let's just go through some real quick tips and tricks. As I said before, steady as she goes. HD has made video very, basically, people's complexions, lines of the face, HD picks up all that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing HD work.
One of the biggest changes in budgets when news studios switched over to HD was additional makeup people. It picks up all your pores, it picks up everything. You look like you're 15 years older.
I'll remain silent on that issue. When you're looking at a shot, these are sort of photography rules. Everything in the world of still photography applies to video, plus sound. So when you frame something, you want to use the rule of thirds, which just loosely says that avoid the center when you're framing stuff up. So if you have a complex image or even a simple image, try to place the elements in that around the edges. And you can see there's, I don't know how well you see it, but there's little red lines kind of thing, breaking up that stuff in thirds. And there's like a pillar on there so you can see your eye leading off to the right edge. And there's some negative space to balance that out. Now having said that, if you have like a really cool shot that you can split 50-50, then if it works, right? So these are just guidelines. Lighting we talked about, the sun is your best friend. Go sun first. Oh.
Stand in the light.
See? Look at that. I won't, because then they'll see me better. That'd be awkward. Sound, we all have mics, and you can hear us easier, so yelling, and that works as well for video. And developing look and style. That's, again, that's time, that's practice, that's just sort of who you are, and if it comes out, and don't worry about anything like that until you get comfortable doing things, and then it'll kind of happen naturally.
Watch Command N over the episodes until Chris started. You'll see such a change in style between him and our previous editor, and even over the course of time he's been doing it. It really develops. It's something that you grow. It's like a personality for your show. It kind of grows with it.
That's true, and this episode's all about focus. It's an art thing. And post-production is huge. Non-linear editing programs, tape-to-tape editing programs, or tape-to-tape hard stuff. Like, this is enormous. Ask questions later if you want, because we don't want to get bogged down in all that stuff. There's tons of programs out there. iMovie will work just fine if you're starting out. You don't need Avid, Final Cut Pro, any of these things.
iMovie 09, I just reviewed it, is actually a pretty good program.
Yeah, lots of built-in stuff. There you go.
Yeah,
okay. So, and we'll just talk a little bit real quick. Once you've done the video, so once you have it up there, where do you want to put it? Well, the whole world is on YouTube. That's just a fact. Although 50% of the videos on YouTube have less than 500 views. And then the other 50% take up the bulk. And then there's really just a few that do, the Susan Boyles and the iPhone launches of the world that do the max 290 million hits kind of traffic. But YouTube's kind of a necessary evil. I shouldn't say it's evil. But you throw it up there, you got to be there. It's just one of those things. So throw it up on YouTube. It's easy to embed. Most people are familiar with it. So that can also be your first and last place. Because if you're shooting for a general audience, everybody's heard of YouTube. Everyone knows YouTube. In fact, it's now like turned into like Kleenex. You know what I mean? Like instead of saying like tissue paper, you're like, oh, just throw it up on YouTube or something. And meanwhile, it's going to Vimeo or somewhere else.